You know, we're in the middle of a series, and I want to really be consistent with what we've been talking about. I'm going to put a quote up there as the foundation of the house I want to build today, and I invite you to take this quote from the Bhagavad Gita. You know, we are an interfaith ministry. We believe there are many paths to the one God, and we dip into the pool of any one of these paths. Today we're going to dip into several of them. But from the Bhagavad Gita, I invite you to read this with me. All beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifested in their middle state, and unmanifest in their end. How many of you are manifest here today? Look around, behold the face of God. How many of you are also unmanifest as a spiritual being as well? You are all of the above. Today is our second in the September series, based loosely on the yin-yang symbol known as Taijitu. Say that with me, Taijitu. In fact, we have a slide with the word up there. Do you have that next slide, Sebastian? And Sebastian's part of the team, has been working real hard. Let's say that together, Taijitu. This is the central symbol of Taoism, but it far exceeds Taoism. It was long here on the planet before Taoism. It's all about balance. It's all about the middle way. It's about harmony with nature, harmony with all of creation. How many of you feel like you're in harmony today with everybody in the room? The music helps us do that, doesn't it? It reminds us we belong to each other. The rhythm, the harmonies, the notes, the chanting remind us that we are in a great family, not just with the people gathered, but with all creation. It's all about apparent opposites. You know, we don't look alike. We don't think alike. We don't have the same notion of what God or the universe is or who we are as individuals, yet we come together, maybe sometimes as polar opposites, intricately woven together in an inseparable interdependence and unbreakable. We cannot break apart. We can believe that we are apart, that we are separate from each other, but we cannot be apart from each other. We were created as the one, and there's only one of us in the room today. God, life, love, light in its many forms with many faces, yet we still are one. It's an eternal and immortal contract between seeming polarities, seeming differences in partnership, which is the engine of motion, which is the engine of life, which is the engine of creation, vibration, and just plain being. Take a breath with me. Just plain being. Taijitu exists. The Tao exists right now as the one essence and the one power. The fourth principle of Taoism teaches us that these opposite energies, in fact, let's read it together, these opposite energies are not just in cooperation with each other, but one is produced from the other. We're not just coexisting and necessary parts. You are birthed from me, I am birthed from you, and we're all birthed from the one. In a great tapestry of that one energy being birthed, it is a necessary. You are necessary to my becoming. I am necessary to yours if you agree with me or if you don't agree with me. The reality is there's something of value that everybody in this room brings. And I have been birthed from the energy that birthed you, and you have been birthed from the energy that birthed me. So these polar opposites sometimes look like out of chaos comes order. Anybody ever experienced that? Eventually you'll get there. Those of you who are in chaos today, you'll get there. Out of chaos comes order, and out of order comes chaos. You can count on it. Things are going to change, they're going to shift because we're on an evolutionary path of becoming a constant spiral upward, of being more of ourselves in the recognition that we belong to each other. Out of darkness comes light. Out of light comes darkness. It can be no other way. So the tide must come in, and the tide must go out. And in order for the tide to go out, it must come in. In order for the tide to come in, it must go out. It's the rhythm. Stan was playing some beautiful rhythms today. We are existing as creatures on this planet in a rhythm of life and love and light. And ours is to tap into that rhythm and not curse any part of the rhythm, the light, the dark, the coming and the going. This is what constitutes Taoism, but it's also a part of the unity path. We're on a rhythm of external realities and internal realities. And so many people on the spiritual path say, no, it's just all an internal experience. God lives within. Yes, God does, by whatever name you choose to give it. Today we might use the word Brahman. It exists within you, but it is also on the outside. Now, there are those of us in New Thought that think God only exists in the things out here. You see, we use the battery. A battery, remember that from last week? The negative and the positive charge, one is not bad and one good. They're both necessary for the engine of creation to work. And so external and internal experiences are absolutely necessary for the spiritual path. We experience both external and internal experiences as tools, just merely tools to come to a state of samadhi. Samadhi is defined a lot of different ways. Anybody in the room, how do you define samadhi? Call it out. The middle path. What else? Lightness? Enlightenment. Thank you, Mike. They're all correct, but my definition, the one I choose to give, is it is a state of total balance and harmony and oneness with all that is, with the Tao. Harmony and balance and oneness with the Tao, with Brahman, with God, with the community as expressions of God. And sometimes that's going to cause the egoic mind to be set aside. We have to set aside the human mind in order to get there. So Taoism uses paradox a lot, but so do all the religions use paradox. I'm going to put a couple up here on the screen. I invite you to read them with me. First, from the Tao Te Ching. Together, if you want to become full, let yourself be empty. Empty, fill. Filled, empty. The rhythm is there. And I like to get to the Christian path as well, but I'm going to go to one of the Gospels that got thrown out by the rulers of the time that said it didn't belong with the agenda, but it belongs with the agenda here at Unity North. And that's from the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas. Together, blessed is he who existed before he came into being. Blessed is she who existed before she came into being. You were before you were. You are before you were. You are eternal, you are immortal. This movement, this rhythm, this energy has always been before you were in physical form. But it's not an accident that you're in a physical form. Today, the apparent polarity, partnership, and paradox I want to work with is form and formless. Form and formless. Let's start with the idea of formlessness. How would you define that? Call it out. Formlessness. How would you describe it? Give me a word. Water. Pure awareness. These are good answers. What else? Consciousness. Yes, 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 and yes. It's simply having no regular shape, no set definition or structure. It's constantly moving and adapting and flowing and changing in a constant state of flowing possibility. Kind of like the chant. You know, with the chanting, you get into it, and chanting is one of my ways to find the infinite. You start with you're chanting the words over and over, and you get past the egoic mind, and pretty soon you're in a flow, and the chant is chanting you. And then the words disappear, and the music just becomes one with your soul and your heart. That's the place of samadhi for me. It's the place of formlessness. But we're going to talk about water and music in a minute. What about form? It constitutes just the opposite of formlessness. Duh. Your human body. It has a form, yes? It's this earthly existence, a certain shape with a constancy of mass, hopefully, if I don't eat too much, a constancy of mass and composition. It's a much more easily grasped and defined human reality. Now, have you noticed in New Thought, those of you who have been around New Thought for a while, that there tends to be an hyper focus on manifestation? We're all about manifestation. And the focus is just uber focused on getting this out here, manifesting the car, the job, the relationship, all these things of an external reality. Is that a bad thing? There's nothing wrong with that unless it is your only focus, because the battery needs both sides of the battery to charge. The yin and the yang are both necessary. But sometimes in New Thought, we get a little hyper-focused on our possessions and our things, and it's all about abundance. The gospel of abundance and prosperity. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a good thing. You're meant to have a good life. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It's been given to you. Experience it. Live it. However, does God exist in the manifest realm? The answer is yes. God exists in both realms. But some define themselves only by what can be experienced by the five senses. Anybody ever been there? And when you define yourself only by the five sensory world, you're putting yourself into a place of suffering because you're only on one side of that apparent polarity. It's a quick trip to suffering because you're only defining your life by your body. And then when you don't have a body or the body is ill, you're in a place of suffering. Only define life by your job. Try that one on and get fired. You're in suffering immediately. But job, relationship, possessions, in a state of attachment. Say that with me. A state of attachment. Focused only on one of those polarities. Ours is to know these things are important. They're absolutely important. This experience on earth, I want you to suck the marrow out of this earthly experience and feel everything. Feel everything, the good and what you've labeled as not so good, because it's necessary to your becoming. But how is it necessary? It's all necessary for an educational purpose. We are here on earth school. We're here to learn. We're here to grow. We're here to stretch. And we're here to use the earthly context as a means of birthing a higher spiritual reality. To learn things about ourselves and who we truly are from the experiences that we have on earth. Ours is to know that these things are important to our education. Yes? Not something that defines us. There's the rub. I'm having an experience. I'm having a lesson. I'm having a relationship, and I am learning. And that's a good thing until I define myself by the relationship. And I define myself by the matter. Then I'm going to put myself very quickly in a place of suffering. See, eventually these tools, they're all tools. My relationship with Bill is just a tool. Sometimes you're a tool. Sometimes I'm a tool. But the reality is everything we're experiencing on earth is just a tool to awaken a higher spiritual reality. And eventually the tool has to be set down. Eventually things go. It's an adaptable, moving, flowing environment. Things are going to change. And in the church world, we have to deal with people come, people go. People are into it, people are not into it. And if you want, as a minister, get into a place of suffering, be attached. I spent 3 years chasing people here. The right people are here in the room right now at the right time to have the right experience of God, to have the right lessons. Yes? So eventually tools have to be set down. A story from the Buddhist tradition. I invite you to, you probably heard it 100 times, hear it with new ears. There once was a man, and he was traveling along a path, and he came to a great expanse of water. As he stood on the shore, he realized that there were dangers all around him, all about. But the shore on the other side appeared safe. It appeared serene. So he looked for a boat or a bridge to get to the other side. Nope, it didn't show up. No boat, no bridge. And so with great effort, he gathered grass, and he gathered twigs and branches, and he began to construct a very simple raft. He paddled across the river on the raft to safety on the other shore, where he could continue his journey on dry land. Now the question that the Buddha asks is, now what would he do with this makeshift raft? What would he do with it? Would he drag it along with him? Would he carry it along with him? Or would he leave it behind? The Buddha clearly answered, he would leave it. He would leave it behind. Adding that the Dharma, which is the teaching, the Dharma is like a raft. It is useful for crossing over, but not for holding on to. Religion is a raft. Unity, even in of itself, is a religious form that is a raft. How many of you would say that the religion of your childhood got you to an awareness of a spiritual reality, and then eventually you had to take that raft and put it down? Probably all of us. If we're on an evolving, growing path, God didn't quit speaking to humanity 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. The infinite universe is speaking and flowing and moving. The raft is there to get us to a higher spiritual reality and a higher vibration. Eventually, we need to set it down. A necessary form of thought and belief that gets us across the river, but eventually it can and does become a hindrance and must be released. Blasphemy, yes, I am a blasphemer today. I am telling you that you need to think and feel and know God beyond the religion of your youth and the religion of this bear, to have you have a direct experience with the infinite. But both are necessary. To realize the spirit and the formless, I needed the form to get to where I am. Yes? Now, how about the other side of the coin? Has anybody ever experienced anybody who was so spiritual they were of no earthly good? Oh, I've met those people. They know more than I'll ever know about the infinite, and they're doing nothing to make the world a better place. You're not in a body by accident. You know, I say all the time around here, service is the highest form of knowing God. If you're not in service to somebody else or something else or an idea or a charity, one thing I love about Chantlanta, they're doing all this work to support a charity that I'm going to ask Ian to tell you about. They're in service to something greater than themselves. We as a community, the fifth unity principle is the truth I know, is the truth that I demonstrate. You're not in a body by accident. You didn't get this form by accident. Use it to serve humanity. Use it to make the world a brighter, more loving place. Yes? We're not in an earth suit by accident. It's a divine educational appointment, and your greatest education and learning is going to be using everything you have, everything you are, for a greater purpose than yourself. The physical and the formed universe is an important, very important vehicle to gain insight, information, and lessons about the formless. We learn about spirit through earthly experience. Now, next week's talk is going to carry it a step further, because eventually the concepts of form and formless both need to be set down. They're keeping you anchored to your head, and eventually they're going to have to be set down. Next week we'll talk about nothing and everything. I'm still trying to get my head around it. You know, I like to use the analogy of music. We had this incredible music, and there's a lot more to come. Music has a structure. As a musician, most of my life, music has a structure. I didn't quite like it too much growing up, learning the scales, learning the chords, learning the theory, learning all that behind it. It's a form that creates a framework that is necessary for my highest version of experiencing music. A framework by which musicians can relate to the vibration of what? The framework is there. Maybe the musicians in the room. How many musicians do we have in the room? Music has a structure and a form that creates a framework by which musicians can relate to the vibration of what? Sound? All music is vibration. So it's the music itself. I'm having a relationship. The structure gives me a box to hold on to experience the vibration of the music. What about the instrument? Let me tell you, I've seen some of the best musicians in the world. There was this classical guitar player, I cannot think of his name, and he would come up, he looked like Hulk Hogan. He was a big, burly guy, and he had this long white hair on both sides, and he was an incredible musician, and he would sit down to play this classical guitar, and he'd go like this. There was no audience at that point. He became one with the vibration of the guitar, and you felt it, and you knew it. Something greater was going on than just entertainment. It was entertaining, though, because he was very bald on top, and we always wanted to paint a little happy face on the top of his head. But the reality, he was having a relationship with the instrument. He was having a relationship with God, Brahman, the energy of spirit that was behind it. How many of you who've been here from Chantlanta would say that what you experienced was much more than entertainment? At one level, it was very entertaining. It was really, really beautiful. How many of you would say that you were having much more than an experience of just a relationship with beautiful music? Chantlanta is about much more than entertainment and music and even service. It's about a connection to the divine. And that's the energy we cultivate here at Unity North. That's why I desperately wanted Chantlanta to come here, because these are musicians that use music for something more than just the sake of making music. It's a form which helps create harmonious sounds and a collective experience that affords agreement for formless expression, or, on the other side of it, creative improvisation. I remember the first time I ever learned to improvise. I was a tuba major in college. Yeah, I know. What was up with that? I love Dixieland music, and I was playing Dixieland music with some of the best musicians on the planet. And all the tuba did was just oompa oompa with the Dixieland. Well, the clarinet player brought me up in the middle of a gig, and he said, "Take it." And he got me out of my chair and pushed me in front of 300 people and said, "Take it." And I said, "Take what?" I had no relationship to the music at the vibrational level. And I made a decision in that moment, I will never let that happen again. I knew the form. I had been taught as a piano player the form, but I never got to the place where I used the form to creatively improvise. Now my greatest, I always say that this piano right here, and I've had this piano for 25 years, that it is my therapist, it is my minister, it is my altar. And if I want to remember who I am, all I have to do is sit down there and check out. The form of a piano, the form of the music that I play allows me to creatively improvise and to find the essence, the divine essence of God. It's a partnership. Both are necessary. Both the form and the formless are necessary for the best experience of music. Form without improvisation. Anybody experience those musicians? Form without any formlessness or creative inspiration is stagnant and boring. I know, Tony, you've heard piano players come to buy a piano from you, sit down, and they played every note right. All the rhythms were right. The form was perfect. And in that concert, you were half asleep into the second movement because there was no feeling. There was no emotion. You didn't get moved. That's why I like your piano playing, Tony, because you put your heart and your soul into the music. Well, life is the same way. Life without spirit is merely survival. Anybody ever been there? The form, I'm going through the motions of living a life on earth in the form, it's survival, and that is a place of suffering. The form is necessary, but there's something greater. How about improvisation without form? Anybody ever been in those groups? I've worked with a lot of musicians. I don't want any structure, man. Let's just go. And it was dissonant. It was inharmonious. It didn't work. There was no shared agreement. There was no shared vibration of agreement with the music. What you're hearing in the chanting, they know it. When Shonali and Ian came in, I don't think you'd seen each other all weekend, had you? You said, "It's good to see you again. What are we doing today?" They called them to number 47A. And they went into it because there was a form to the chant that they have rehearsed and practiced with that they could then create in the moment. What is a life? A life that's all about improvisation and no form. Chaos. Chaos. And sometimes we as creative beings, new thought people, we rebel against form. Break out of the box. Push those boundaries aside. But let us today recognize that they are necessary for the most beautiful music, for the most beautiful expression and experience of life. I have a relationship with God, but I have a relationship with you, with the people, the things and the experiences in my life. This building is a structure that held Chantlanta this weekend. I'm grateful for the structure that held the music in a container where we could have a collective experience. It's a both and reality, not either or. Now, Tara, you talked about water. By the way, I just love that guy. I found his picture and I said, I want to be him. He understands form and creativity, improvisation, and foundation. Let's talk about water. Water is a great symbol for life. Yes, it constantly changes. It constantly adapts to the circumstances. And when it comes to water, it's one substance, many forms. Which form is better? You've got solid, it turns into ice, fluid, liquid, water, and then it turns into vapor where you can't see it, you can't hold it. One is not better than the other. I look at where I have found God on this planet. Glaciers formed the most beautiful architecture on earth. Water as solid, breaking through stone, breaking through earth, and creating. I just came back from the Grand Canyon. And Yosemite Valley is I don't need a sanctuary as long as I'm in Yosemite Valley. I know there's a God, and I can vibrate with the water as it pounds on my head. It's powerful. Water as solid is powerful. but no less or more powerful than water as liquid. The river. Ever sit by a river? Rivers move earth. They move rocks. It's persistent. It takes time, but eventually the water is going to, and this is what Taoism's all about, be persistent, consistent about your practice. And eventually the rocks, the blocks, disappear and go away. Anybody ever try to hold water? In the swimming pool as a kid? Hold water. It's still got some form, but you can't do it. You cannot hold on to it. It's making a transition from ice that you can hold through the fluid and into the vapor. And the vapor eventually makes it to the heavens. The clouds are heaven. It makes its way to the ocean, and the circle all continues. It's a continuity of life. It's a continuity of spiritual path. We need to be more water-like in our approach to life, a balanced, I'm going to change forms. I'm going to be water-like. I'm going to be ice-like. I'm going to be vapor-like. And there's a lot of people in New Thought that are very vapor-like. Have you met them? All three of those people were on the dance floor Friday night. And let me tell you, every one of their expressions was beautiful to behold. I'm not much of a dancer, but I was dancing at home. I was watching, dancing at home looking like a block of ice. It's not my strong suit, but enjoying the fluidity and the vaporous spiritual dancing, as well as those that were blocking and stepping like you did in middle school. All are important. The spiritual path requires us to be water-like, formless in spirit with the ability to play. To play. That's what Chinali said. To play in the realm of form for a reason, for a purpose. Education, relationship, play, and learning. You see, the formless contextualizes our earthly experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we're also human beings having a spiritual experience. And sometimes you're just going to be a human being having a very human experience. You been there? And sometimes, as a vapor, you're a spiritual being having a spiritual experience, and it's all good. It's all holy. It's all sacred, and it's all welcome here. How many Star Trek fans do we have in the room? I was never much of a Trekkie at all. But as I prepared for this talk, I came across a scene from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Between a character, I'm sure you all the Trekkies in the room know a character named Odo. Odo, and he's having a conversation with a female character, and it's usually the female characters that are the brightest in the room, both in the ethereal realm and on the earthly realm, but that's a topic for another Sunday. They're having a conversation. Both of them are changelings. Changelings. What does that mean? They are creatures with the ability to shift into anything they desire. When I sent the PowerPoint for this week, Sebastian, who never really comments, he gets them. He's the one running the slides up there. He said, "Oh my gosh, you're doing something from Star Trek." I said he must recognize it because Sebastian is one of the best changelings I know on the planet. I think his middle name is Odo. He can fit into any environment in such a way that the people he's with feel a little bit more loving, a little bit more connected. And so I honor the Odo within you, Sebastian, the changeling within you. They both come from the planet. Do you remember the name of the planet? The Link. The Link. I didn't know this. Maybe I hope I'm right, and all the Star Trek people are going to correct me afterwards. I found that really interesting. The link, the middle way between the ethereal and the form, the formless and the earthly experience, there is a link, and that's the planet that the changelings come from. Odo has made a decision to live and work with humans. The decision that each and every one of you has made. I'm going to be on earth, and I'm going to incarnate in a formed body, and I'm going to have relationships with people that I would call tools, and that would call me tools. To create a human identity. Now he's struggling with that human identity with a little bit of resentment. He struggles to form that identity, and the female changeling questions him and says about his identity, "When you return to the link, what will become of the entity that I'm talking to right now?" The drop becomes the ocean. The formed becomes formless. And if you choose to take solid form again, the ocean becomes a drop. Formed, formless. It is a yin and a yang. It is a flow of changeling water, spiritual energy. Let's say that together. The drop becomes the ocean becomes a drop. And eventually you get to the place, how many drops do we have in the room today? Your hand should be up. Unless you're planning to ascend right in this moment. We'll get more people to come to Unity North if in the newspaper tomorrow it says, 6 people ascended. And how many people are the ocean today, are living as the ocean today? Everybody's hand should be up. It is a both and reality. It is both necessary. I am part of the formed world, and it's beautiful. I am part of the formless world, the ocean of godly existence, and it is also beautiful. And somehow they meet, and something beautiful happens. Music happens. Water happens. I'm going to invite the musicians to come back up. Behind everything is formless substance, that which is standing underneath all creation. Some call it God, some call it Brahman, some people call it Stanholt. He's got the bells on. It matters less. It matters a heck of a lot less what we call it, and more that we have an awareness that as we go about the job of being an earth student on a spiritual path, it's all one big playground. The Hindus would call it Leela. Say that with me. Leela, God's playground. And in this playground, we have tools of thought, experience, relationship, religion, and matter. But let us never identify ourselves only with those things, but just contextualize them as tools. They are not what we are. They never have been, and they never will be. Once the raft gets us to where we want to go, we set it down. I'm going to end with a final quote from Sri Ramakrishna, and then we're going to have some more music as our meditation. I invite you to say it with me. One can rightly speak of God only after one has seen him. He who has seen God knows truly that God has form and that he is formless as well. Further, he is beyond both form and formless. Somehow, I'm going to get to nothing and everything next week in our series of yin and yang, of taijitsu, of a both and reality. In the meantime, let beautiful music be formed as you, in partnership with family and community. Let water have its way because you're 90% water. That's what you are. Live in your birthright as water. Be a changeling and know that we are both spiritual beings having a human experience and human beings having a spiritual experience, and it's all called God.